Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mark Henry. I'm a senior engineer with Open-AudIT's North American office located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today we're going to talk about how to audit complex networks with Open-AudIT. So for those of you who are joining us live in today's GoToWebinar, we will be sending along an email with a link to the recording on the GoToWebinar site. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them as they come to mind. We'll be monitoring the questions and answer panel throughout the webinar. Upon the completion of the webinar, there is a very short exit survey. It's only 3 questions. Please take a moment and answer it to the best of your ability. Be as honest as you want to be with it. It's how we improve the quality of our webinars. It's how I get better as a presenter as well, and it's also how we choose future subject matter to go over as well. You'll also note that if you're in GoToWebinar, that if you look at the handouts panel, there is a download. There's a PDF copy of today's PowerPoint in the handouts piece. If you don't download it today for whatever reason, or if you're joining in and watching this on Augmantic's YouTube channel or on the augmantic.com Learn portal, you should be able to find the PDF as a downloadable resource for you from augmantic.com/learn. So the big topics for today, we're often asked questions from prospects or from clients. How do they handle situations like auditing a PCI-DSS DMZ, where information can leave the DMZ, but information can't come in. So a auditing server located outside the DMZ can't audit into it and then pull information back out. We also get quite a lot of questions, especially from federal government contractors, on how to handle air-gapped networks, literally small networks, LANs, or even just a small grouping of computers which physically have no connection outside of that LAN. So there's no connection to the internet, there's no wireless connection at all. There's nothing that allows them to connect automatically to outside networks. So just to kind of get right to the end point, Open-AudIT has methods and opportunities for handling all of those different types of complex network topologies and security issues, and we're going to step through them today. We're also going to step through the logic of how you determine what the best approach is on a subnet by subnet basis for auditing those types of networks. So we're going to be talking about 2 different Augmantic solutions today. The first we're going to be touching on is Open-AudIT Community Edition, which is the free and open source version of Open-AudIT. And then we're also going to be talking about the pros to stepping up into a commercial version of Open-AudIT. So we offer 2 different levels of commercial licensing, Open-AudIT Professional and Open-AudIT Enterprise. And so we'll be touching on each of those, what you can and can't do with each of those solutions, and how you can best architect a solution to deliver the results that you're looking for. So useful references. There is, of course, the Augmantic Open-AudIT Wiki. You should always look there and do a search there for questions that you have. We also have a forum specifically for Open-AudIT. So feel free to go to the forum, post questions there. Our programming team, our support team both monitor the forum as well. We have a community questions board, so feel free to ask your questions on the community questions board if you don't want to do it on the forum. And then, of course, if you're a supported customer, so if you have a license to professional or enterprise, please shoot any of your questions over to support@augmantic.com, and our team of support engineers will be happy to get back to you with answers or links to our wiki, etc. If you have questions about purchasing a commercial license to professional or enterprise, you can, of course, email the North American sales team at usa@augmantic.com. And if you're outside of the North America area, we'll do an introduction for you to the appropriate account manager for your global region. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through what's called an audit decision tree. Really what this comes down to is the idea of understanding exactly what is impacting or can impact the way that you run audits using Open-AudIT. Generally speaking, you're going to install Open-AudIT on 1 or more servers, and those could be Linux servers or a Windows server, as long as it's a 64-bit architecture. You're going to install Open-AudIT on a server, and then that server needs to be able to see all of the different LANs and all of the different devices on the network to discover them, audit them, and then return the results of those audits back to the server. Now, there's a lot of things that can happen that prevents that discovery and audit from taking place. And it could be something as simple as different types of network architecture. Maybe, again, you have some kind of a DMZ. Maybe you have routers or firewalls configured that has ports or protocols closed off so that either the discovery can't run out and discover devices, or that the results of the audits can't come back to the server. You might also run into situations where you don't have credentials for certain devices, or even for certain entire LANs or classes of devices. Or there may be a corporate security requirement that those credentials can't be stored in Open-AudIT's credential vault for whatever reason. There might also be physical limitations, right? You might have remote locations with no dedicated circuit or very high latency. So it might be difficult to have a centrally located Open-AudIT server, let's say at your corporate headquarters in New York City, and you're trying to audit a network, let's say in Fargo, and it's you have a situation where there's a high amount of latency on the circuit, or maybe you don't have a dedicated circuit, so it's not always up, and so it's difficult for the Open-AudIT server to reach out and audit that subnet. And of course, you might also run into those situations where you have those air-gapped devices or networks, and you still want to be able to audit them to some extent and automate the collection of the physical hardware inventory, the hardware configuration, all of its settings and parameters, and then also if it's all of its installed software, and be able to get that information back into the Open-AudIT server so you at least have a complete picture of your network. So just a quick rundown on the differences between the three levels of Open-AudIT: community, professional, and enterprise. The biggest pieces for professional, the concepts that you get a highly interactive dashboard, you get the ability to use geographical maps so you can plot all your devices out on a Google map. You can also export your devices in many different formats. You can schedule both discoveries and reporting using professional. And then there's also enhanced reports that are available starting with professional that are not available in community. So it's the idea of devices that have not been seen in the past 30 days, et cetera. When you step up from professional to enterprise, you also get the availability to do high scale and high availability. So you can actually scale Open-AudIT out so you can have more than just one server. You can have multiple servers called collectors. They can handle different regions and then push back up to a master server. We also add in file auditing, so you can actually audit a file or a folder and keep track of changes to those files over time. You can create device baselines. So for example, you can create a baseline for a Windows 2008 R2 server and say, every Windows 2008 R2 server that I have should meet this baseline configuration, and the system will tell you which ones do and which ones don't. Professional also supports configurable role-based access, so it has a very, very strong RBAC system in it that you can completely customize. Professional has an RBAC system in it as well, although it's predefined and you can't do much customization to it. And then, of course, Enterprise also includes a very powerful RESTful API that you can call and pull information out of Open-AudIT. So, what is the actual thought process that you go through to determine different methods that may work for being able to audit in the situation that you have? So we've got this handy little flow chart. We actually have a couple of pages on the Autmantic wiki that will actually walk you through this. So make sure you take a look at that. This video will probably be added to that page as well at some point in the future. But starting at the top and asking that first question: can the Open-AudIT server see the subnet, and can the devices return audit results to the server? So let's start by going left down this flow chart to yes. The next question then is this an Active Directory discovery? So we're coming down to this point, and we're asking ourselves, is this an Active Directory discovery? So Open-AudIT, the server itself, has two ways of discovering and auditing devices. The first is simply by providing a list of subnets that you want Open-AudIT to scan, and Open-AudIT will walk down each of those subnets You can provide any kind of a subnet you want. So you might do 192.168.0.0/24. So it'll do the 255 IP addresses in that range, and it'll walk down from .1 all the way to .255, and it will interrogate each individual IP address one at a time, determine what type of device is there, determine what the best methodology is to audit that device, and then audit that device. And you can, of course, create multiple lists of subnets with different masks, etc., and it'll follow that route. Or if you're using Active Directory, what you can do instead is you actually provide the login information for your AD server, and you can provide more than one AD server. Open-AudIT will then query the AD server and ask it, what subnets do you manage? Do you have control over? The Active Directory server will return a list of those subnets to Open-AudIT. Open-AudIT will then automatically create subnet discoveries for each of those subnets that the AD server is in charge of. And so it will create subnet discoveries and then start those subnet discovery process. So just at a very high level, Open-AudIT Community Edition, free and open source, generally designed for small LAN, small deployments, but we have seen companies as large as about 55,000 devices across many different subnets using Open-AudIT Community Edition and using it well. But it's important to understand that you don't have the ability to schedule your audits. You're limited in the visualization, how you can see audits. You can't automatically create reports and email those around to people. So there are limitations in what community can do. Stepping up, if you're managing multiple LANs or your network is segmented into different LANs, WANs, MANs, etc., if you have any kind of breakouts into different DMZs, you're going to want to start looking at the concept of stepping up into at least professional, if not enterprise. Again, with professional, you can schedule discoveries, schedule your reports, and see what those look like. Let's step over for just a moment and take a look at what that looks like. So this is the summaries dashboard for Open-AudIT Community Edition. I know it says Open-AudIT Enterprise in the top left. That's because we're on Opmantic's demo server and we're licensed here for Open-AudIT Enterprise. So Community and Enterprise are integrally linked. In fact, both the Professional and the Enterprise Edition actually sit on top of Community as an interface shell, which provides additional features and functionality and an enhanced user experience. So from here again, you can create your discoveries, your subnet audits, your AD audits from here as well. But you can't schedule anything to happen in a repetitive nature. If we step over to the enterprise interface, and the professional and enterprise interface are exactly the same. Enterprise enjoys a larger selection of pre-built dashboards, which you're looking at now. This is the one of the enterprise dashboards that ships with enterprise. But also in enterprise, you can create custom dashboards. You can create custom widgets. Each of these individual pie and line charts is a widget in the dashboard system. So you can create custom widgets. You can audit or modify rather the widgets that ship with Open-AudIT, and you can create custom dashboards. Again, that's only in the Enterprise Edition. In the Professional Edition, we come with 3 pre-built dashboards. But here, you can not only create discoveries. So let's take a look at what discoveries. So you can see here, we have quite a few discoveries. Some of them are just individual IP addresses that have been set up. And then you can also take a look at your scheduled discoveries. And so these are discoveries that we're going to run on different schedules. So some of them happen on certain days of the week, on every day of the week, on one day of the week, but at different hours and minutes of the day. And we're also calling some of them, we're calling as collectors as well. So we have a secondary server out there called a collector that's actually handling a small LAN and then returning results back to a master server. So again, if your Open-AudIT server can see the subnet and the subnet can return results, You simply create a discovery, you add credentials to the system, you run the discovery, or you schedule that discovery as a task, and you have it run on whatever scheduled cadence you want it to run on. So if we've handled that left-hand side of the question, instead, if we say, can the Open-AudIT server see the subnet, and can the devices return audit results to the server? Instead of saying yes, let's suppose that we say no. So that for whatever reason, the Open-AudIT server cannot see that subnet. The next question we ask is, can devices return results to the server? So that can the device itself, can the router, switch, hub, firewall, load balancer, Windows server, Linux machine, ESXi server, etc., can those devices see the Open-AudIT server? So what we're going to do is we're going to answer yes to that. So we're going to go left, and we're going to answer yes. So if we go left and we answer yes, then the answer is we run a script locally on the machine. And what that really means is, let's move forward. Open-AudIT has a couple of different ways that it works in finding devices. One of the first things it does is when it's doing a discovery, it checks to see if SNMP is open. And if SNMP is open, then it scans the device using SNMP and tries to determine what it is. It then either inserts or updates the device, and then it looks to see if WMI is open. If WMI is open, then it also audits the machine using the Windows audit script. If WMI is not open, it'll look to see if SSH is open. If SSH is open, it'll then audit the machine using the audit Linux external script. So you're probably asking yourself, what are these script things that you speak of? So when Open-AudIT is auditing a device that has a thoughtful interactive operating system, I'm thinking of a Windows workstation, a Windows server, a Linux machine, a Unix machine, ESXi, AIX, Sun Solaris, a Mac OS X, any type of thoughtful operating system, interactive operating system. Augmantix has actually provided a series of auditing scripts written in the local language of that operating system. So for Windows, it's written in a Visual Basic Script. In Linux, it's written in some version of Bash, depending on the type of Linux or Unix system that it's written in. So it's written in the local operating system scripting language. That auditing script is then actually copied from the Open-AudIT server down to the machine and then told to run. That auditing script creates XML output, which is then returned back to the auditing server. In situations where the Open-AudIT server cannot reach the device, what you can do is you can actually take those auditing scripts, deploy them to the device, and then using some kind of a local scheduler, like the Windows Task Scheduler, or for Linux, a cron job, have a Windows Task Schedule or a cron job kick off and run that audit script, let's say whenever the machine is booted up, maybe every day at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. on Mondays, or 3 p.m. on Tuesdays, or whatever schedule makes the most sense to you, and then have the result of that audit, that XML file, again, pushed from that machine back to the auditing server. So again, the example here is that the auditing server cannot discover the device, but instead you can audit locally and return the result back to the auditing server. So what audit scripts do we ship with? So AIX, Linux, OS X, Windows, ESXi, and Solaris. And I believe we just added an additional new script as well for HP devices. So let's go discover audit scripts, list audit scripts. So you've got audit AIX, Linux, OS X, Windows, ESXi, Solaris, and HPUX. And if you check the page here at the top, the link that's included here, and again, you can download this this as a PDF. This presentation is a PDF. But if you check that page out, it'll walk you through how to modify the scripts, to return the results back to the auditing server, and how to store them, how to deliver them out, how to get them out there. Now you'll notice that what we don't have here is a way to audit the network components, and that's an important piece. So currently, if the Open-AudIT server cannot reach the subnet to audit it and discover devices, and you choose to deploy scripts, please understand, you're not going to get a full picture of that section of the network, of that subnet. You're not going to be able to see any of the network type devices, the routers, switches, hubs, firewalls, the things that would have been audited using SNMP. And of course, because you're deploying audit scripts out to machines, you have to already know all the machines that you want to be able to audit. And that is a downside to this approach, is that with the discovery server, with Open-AudIT discovering devices and walking down the IP addresses of the subnet, Open-AudIT is actually looking to see which subnets actually have a device on them. And so it's finding devices and then auditing those devices. So it can be a difficult proposition if you're trying to audit a subnet that you can't discover devices on and you need to return, but you're not really aware of what devices are out there, which IP addresses are in use. Fear not, there are other solutions at hand. So back here, so we've completed this can devices return results to server, and instead of saying yes, let's say no, they can't, right? And that would be the example of those networking devices on that subnet, right? Because those devices can't, there's no way to deploy an audit script to a network device, so they can't return any audit results. So can a collector server be deployed? That's the next question. So I mentioned earlier that Open-AudIT comes in 3 different flavors: community, professional, and enterprise. So far, everything that we've talked about can be done by both community edition and professional. But when we come down to this next step, can a collector server be deployed? Collector servers are only supported at the enterprise licensing level. So you license Open-AudIT Enterprise for the total number of devices you're going to audit. A license to Open-AudIT Enterprise comes with 1 license for 1 collector. So you can deploy Open-AudIT Enterprise as a master server. You can deploy a collector out remotely at some location, and additional collectors can be licensed as well. So you can add those in. But let's go to the left on this one. Let's say yes, I can deploy collectors locally within that subnet or within that network. So what does that look like? So in this example, I now have Open-AudIT Enterprise deployed as a master server. I may have 1 or more LANs where I have a collector deployed managing those LANs. So in this example, I've got 3 collectors, 3 different LANs. They could be remotely, they could be in far off locations. Logically, they could be within that PCI-DSS DMZ. So you could actually deploy a collector within the PCI-DSS DMZ and have that collector audit devices locally within the DMZ and then push the results of that audit out to the Open-AudIT Enterprise master server. That way everything is managed within 1 interface. You see it all in 1 database on the master server. You control the collectors directly from Open-AudIT Enterprise at the master level. You add subnet scans, you add all your credentials, you do all your scheduling from the Open-AudIT Enterprise master server level, and it controls all of the collectors and how they operate. So that gives you that opportunity to be able to audit those remote or isolated devices, or for example, get on the other side of a firewall, for example, in a DMZ, and be able to audit those subnets or even those remote LANs that might have a high latency, and audit them locally and then return the results back to the master server. Again, so you have a single pane of glass and a single reference point. All right, so we've addressed the idea of, can a collector be deployed? So what happens if you can't deploy a collector? So for whatever reason, you have some kind of a network that you can't audit into and you can't return results from, and you also can't deploy a collector internally to it because maybe you could put a collector in it, but that collector can't return results back to the master server. Because remember, if you go this if you go this direction and you deploy a collector server, that collector server needs to be able to push its information back up to a master server level. And if that collector can't talk to the master server, then you're still going down the direction of a no answer. So what happens when you go this way? So if you can't deploy a collector, if you can't deploy a standalone Open-AudIT server, if you can't deploy a script and have the script return the results to a server that's located somewhere outside that LAN, you've really got two options at that point. You're really talking about something which is effectively an air-gapped network. Now, it may actually be air-gapped, physically having no connection anywhere else, or it could logically have so many security settings on it, so many security restrictions, that for all intents and purposes, as far as Open-AudIT is concerned, it acts like an air-gapped network. It can't reach outside. So the first question that we ask here is not really one of logical capabilities, but physical capabilities. Are external storage devices allowed within the air-gapped network? And so that could be something like DV or CD read writes. That could be thumb drives. For those of you old school folks, that could be any kind of disk drive or something portable where the results of the audit script could be written to something portable like a thumb drive and sneaker netted out of the air-gapped network and then imported into the Open-AudIT server. And so the example that we're thinking of is the idea where an engineer or a resource, a physical resource, an individual, would be able to have the audit scripts on a thumb drive and walk around to each machine, whether physically or logically, within that air-gapped network, audit the machine using the audit script, and then save the results, the XML file results from that audit, onto that portable device, that thumb drive, and then take that thumb drive outside of the air-gapped network and then import those XML results into Open-AudIT. So Open-AudIT has several different ways of importing the results of an audit. It can, of course, import the results of its own audits, but you can also pass it those XML files, and Open-AudIT can process those and import those just as if it had discovered the device and audited the device itself. Now, if for whatever reason you can't use some kind of an external storage device, in this example, then you've got to really sit down and brainstorm with your team. If you were to deploy the audit scripts on each of the machines within the air-gapped network and run the audit scripts, the scripts actually have the option of generating the XML file upon completion of the audit. So not only can the script return the results back to a master server, but it can create that XML file and save it on disk. Now, it can save it locally on that machine, or you could point it to a central repository or folder or network storage device within that air-gapped network and have all of the audit scripts in one place. Finally, though, if you can't use some kind of a portable device to put those scripts on, is there any way that you can schedule a backup where, again, if you're writing the results of those audits into a specific directory, can you back that directory up? Can you back that directory up onto a tape or onto a writable DVD or CD-ROM? Can that device then be pulled out on a schedule, or can that folder be backed up and moved or carried or transferred off-site some way? So it's talking through those options and trying to understand what can be done. In many cases, what you'll find is that there's actually a combination of routes that may be done. We've talked to clients who have air-gapped networks who deploy an Open-AudIT server within the air-gapped network, have it audit within just that air-gapped network, however many machines. It could be 2 machines, 5 machines, 10 machines, 10,000, whatever. And then they take and they back up the Open-AudIT database. They burn that backup onto a CD or DVD drive. They burn it onto a DVD, and then they literally take that backed up database and once a quarter, once a month, once a year, however often, import the results of that and merge that database, that kind of remote database, back into the master server, or simply import it into a version of Open-AudIT that is a ghost copy of the that air-gapped network. And so there are lots of different options that are here. Really, it comes down to walking through this type of a logical discussion, talking frankly about what can and cannot be done, what's acceptable and not acceptable. We've run into clients where in air-gapped networks, it was absolutely okay for them to have resources walk in with thumb drives, connect them on, run the script, and walk out with that thumb drive. And with other clients, they looked at that option. They said absolutely not. People can't come in. They have to be in clean suits. They're not allowed to bring in or out anything from the network at all. It's a classified or controlled environment. So it's talking through the options, understanding what can and can't be done, both from a physical process standpoint, but also from a logical what works and what doesn't work standpoint. There is one more option that we'd like to talk about today, and that's the concept of running a physical audit. So Open-AudIT, again, logically walks down a subnet, goes IP address by IP address, interrogating each IP address, determining what is at that, and then auditing that device based on what ports and protocols are open. But there are times when you may have devices that are not on a network or which simply can't reply to an audit. You might have devices that are not powered up, so they're connected to the network, but they're turned off for whatever reason. And you might have an inventory of devices in stock. You might have spare parts. You might have old computers that are retired, but you don't necessarily want to get rid of because maybe they're still good devices. They still have life in them, and you physically want to be able to inventory all of those types of things that Open-AudIT can't see or that those devices can't audit themselves because they're not powered up. So how can you actually run a physical audit with Open-AudIT? The first thing that you want to do is define internally your process. So how will the audit be done? Who's doing it? Who's going to walk around office by office, floor by floor, warehouse by warehouse? Who's going to do that? And how they're going to identify those devices? Are there going to be barcodes? Is that barcode number something that can be imported into Open-AudIT? Can it be added to Open-AudIT? You want to be able to create that information. You also want to determine, will Open-AudIT already have a list of these devices that are offline? Can those be imported in from a spreadsheet to seed Open-AudIT, so you don't necessarily have to feed it all the information as you're walking around? Open-AudIT, of course, has a capability of creating custom fields. So you might want to create several fields. You might have, for example, you might create a field called physical audit, and it might have a yes/no option. So it's a drop-down list box maybe. So you might identify a device as having a physical audit. You might also have a drop-down list box of the different names of the people who might perform the audit. That way, whoever's performing an audit physically walking around and saying, yes, I absolutely have that spare computer here on the shelf, that person can select their name. And you might want to have a date field as well. And again, I'm just kind of thinking on these on the fly. So you might add those three fields to Open-AudIT. You might then also create a couple custom queries. Like you might create a custom query that looks at that custom field that says, is this machine a physical audit? And for every machine that has a yes, then create a report with that list of devices. And then you could search through that list for the device that you're auditing at the moment, adjust the additional other parameters. I'm auditing it, and I'm auditing it today, and then save that results. So to those of you who are looking for a way to audit really complex networks, again, we've talked through the concepts of how Open-AudIT's device discovery and auditing system works. We've talked through options for deploying scripts, as well as when you might use Open-AudIT's collectors with Open-AudIT Enterprise. We also talked through the concept of working as a sneaker net in an air-gapped network. And then finally, as a final option, doing an actual physical audit. And an actual physical audit also is definitely an option on those subnets or those networks that are air-gapped. You could absolutely put a barcode on a computer and be able to walk up and scan that, do a search through Open-AudIT, find that device, mark it as being physically audited, and then move on to the next device. The PowerPoint, or rather the PDF of today's PowerPoint presentation, includes a nice little overview of custom fields, as well as how to create custom queries, along with the links to those pieces as well, back to the Audmantic community wiki. That completes today's webinar. Again, my name is Mark Henry. I'm a senior engineer. You can reach me at markh@audmantic.com. That's also my cell phone number up on the contact information here. If you have any questions regarding upgrading from Open-AudIT Community into professional or enterprise, feel free to email usa@audmantic.com. And if you're outside the North American region, Tom and I will be happy to refer you to your account executive within your geographic location. Thank you all very much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you all again at a future webinar.